Ailinyanchu, Maria Kumankispe, Sutimi, Kee, Nokakosko Mantankani, Imanaya Kashankichis. I'm going to talk with you today about stories of spirit in Native communities and ignite in you the flame to upend systemic bias through the kinds of stories that we tell. And these are stories that need to be filled with spirit. And by spirit, I mean that we need to imbue them with heart. And this is especially important in research and science as a way of upending the systemic bias that science unwittingly supports. So let me tell you a little bit about my background. I'm Quechua. I was born in Peru. Quechua is one of the largest indigenous nations in South America. My husband is Navajo, so we identify as indigenous. And if you were to ask my daughter, she says that yes, Mama and Papa are indigenous, but she is not. She has already heard all the stories and messages around her, subtle and blatant, that put out the shame and the inferiority for Native peoples. And this is why it's so important to really pay attention to the kinds of stories that we're telling through our science and research, because it's systemic bias is upheld by who are the tellers of these stories, how they're being told. And we need to listen to what we're telling, because the stories that we're hearing through science and research right now are reflecting what is wrong with us rather than what is right with us. So for our children, one of the ways that science does this, as an example, this is from the Centers for Disease Control, that says like what a child is able to do. Age 5, use a fork and spoon sometimes. A knife, you can see like it's sort of a dull-ended knife there. And I believed the inferiority of children until I met a 4-year-old down in this corner here who had a kitchen knife larger and sharper than my own and could peel potatoes 10 times faster than me. And so this is one way that our science is telling us stories about our communities that are telling us we're less than. I know we've all probably been guilty of using some of these words, or at least reading them about our communities. And that's what we need to be aware of about systemic bias, that it's in our science and research that instead of cultivating our strengths, it's putting us down. So we need to upend that and really pay attention to how we're engaging in our science rather than building this dependency, to build this strength, this love, this power within ourselves that we know of through being able to tell stories by, for, and about our own communities. So an example of the way that we've dealt with this, I work with the New Mexico Tribal Prevention Project, and so our team decided to collaborate with Native artists from 7 different communities, and they became the researchers to talk about whether the substance abuse prevention programs in their communities were impacting the communities in an effective way. And so they were the ones to collect the data, to do the observations, and to put out the visual reports of what they saw. And you can see it wasn't about number of DUI arrests or binge drinking, or it was about these amazing impacts of positivity, of strength, of beauty, of these youth being brought back into the folds of their community, of revitalizing traditions, of elders being reconnected to the youth, and the two-way teaching going on of our languages. So we need to remember, even among ourselves, we know that one bit of criticism and one compliment, we only remember the criticism. So we need to inundate our science and research with all the positives of our communities. And I know this sounds easy, but it's hard. As my daughter would tell me, I don't do this enough for her. And it's the same thing in our science and research. We have to build that heartbeat and that spirit into the stories that we're telling that are by, for, and about our communities. And it needs to be at such a ratio, 7-to-1 at the minimum, of that heart and that beauty and that spirit. And so I know all of us here, with the power that we all possess together, that we can bring those stories to light and fill the stories of our research and our science with the beauty that's in our Native communities, and remember that that's the spirit that we want our next generations to carry on with them.